What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Transformers Unpopular Opinion video. So, the first video was received pretty well, and I received a lot of comments from people who shared their own unpopular opinions, so I thought I'd best make a part 2 ASAP. And I will be making a part 3 as well, so if your comment wasn't included in this video, don't worry, I'll be saving it for the next one. But anyways, this video will work the same as the first video, where I go over 8 of your unpopular opinions and then give you 2 of my own. And with that, our first opinion is from Storm, and they say that the Legacy toy line is actually really good. And I do agree with this statement, although I have to admit I personally have not collected any Legacy figures yet, so my opinion is purely based on what I've seen rather than actually having these figures in hand. But from what I have seen, most of these figures look really cool, and I do like that they're covering pretty much every aspect of the Transformers franchise in this one toy line. In particular, I really like the look of animated Bumblebee, Armada Optimus Prime, Tidal Wave and Tarn. I will admit that there are a few figures that are a bit disappointing, with Bulkhead, Breakdown and Prime RC being the main ones for me. However, I still don't think they look outrageously bad, to be honest. So yeah, I do think that some of the hate for this toy line is a bit over the top, as the majority of the figures actually look great to me. Next up is an opinion from Edgelord6578, which says that Hasbro should stop acting like Megatron, Soundwave, Starscream and Shockwave are the only Decepticons that matter. And I partly agree with this statement as well. Now, I will say that I don't think Hasbro should necessarily sideline these characters, as they are the main Decepticons and they are the main ones that everyone recognises. However, I agree that we should see other Decepticons such as Barricade, Knockout and Blitzwing, for example, get the spotlight too. I think we are starting to slowly move away from this, as we did have 2 live action films with Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts, where none of these characters were the main villains or had anything to do with the story. And yes, I know, Soundwave, Shockwave and Starscream were in the Cybertron scene in Bumblebee, however that was more as a cameo rather than as a proper villain. But yeah, it was nice to see characters like Shatter and Dropkick get the main villain treatment, alongside Scourge, Nightbird and Battletrap. And I hope we see more of this in the shows and comics too, as it allows for different stories and characters to shine, and it keeps the franchise from becoming stale. Next up is an opinion from EricCM8110 that says that Transformers Age of Extinction is the best Transformers movie. And for this one, I disagree. But I will say I think this movie is very much underrated, as I think people focus way too much on that one scene about the Romeo and Juliet law and will dismiss the rest of the film, which is pretty solid. I loved the Dinobots, Lockdown was one of the best villains we've seen in live action, I liked all the new Autobots and the action was pretty good too. However, I have a lot more problems with this film compared to the things I liked, and a few of them were that the Dinobots weren't in the film enough, despite the marketing suggesting otherwise. I didn't like Transformium and how it changed the transformations. I thought Galvatron and the KSI drones were weak villains. I didn't like that Drift and Crosshairs were pretty much sidelined in that final battle. And finally, I hated that the majority of the Autobots from Dark of the Moon were killed off screen. Overall, I still enjoy this film, and it's definitely not the worst Transformers film, but I just don't think it compares to Dark of the Moon, the 2007 movie, or Transformers 1 and Bumblebee, as each of those films either have better action, a more compelling story, or just more likeable characters in my opinion. Now on to our fourth unpopular opinion, which comes from Indominus Gojira, and they say that Optimus should always have the faceplate on. And I would probably say that I disagree here, but I will say that I think he looks way better with it on, and I wouldn't mind if he did keep it on all the time. But I do think the faceplate limits the amount of emotion he can show. Now, I'm not saying that he can't show emotion with the faceplate on, as there are many moments where his body language and his eyes do the job. For some examples where I think it works better without the faceplate, we have the moment where he talks to Jazz, Ironhide and Ratchet in the first live action film, the moment where he discovers Sentinel Prime's betrayal in Dark of the Moon. There's also the time where he tries to convince Noah not to destroy the Transwarp key in Rise of the Beasts. So as much as I love his look with it on, and it's clearly his most iconic look, I do also prefer it to be more of something he uses in battle, and then he takes it off when he needs to show more emotion or just when talking to other characters. Next up is our fifth opinion, which comes from Wonder Penguins 2007, where they say that both of the Cybertron games are heavily overrated. And as much as I can understand this opinion, I do also disagree with it. So in my personal opinion, I don't think the gameplay itself is that amazing, as I've never personally been one for the over-the-shoulder shooter type games. It doesn't feel as immersive in my opinion. So yeah, I can understand that from a gameplay aspect, it can be a bit overrated. However, I think the main thing people love about these games is the story, and as for that, I think these games are the best Transformers games, and it highly outweighs the gameplay in my opinion. I love that these games really emphasise how serious of a war this is, and how much of an effect it has on the characters and Cybertron as a whole. I also love that we get to play as characters that don't always get the spotlight, with Warpath, Cliffjumper, Vortex, Swindle and Bruticus for example. I also love the set pieces and how massive this game can be, with scenes like where Metroplex is activated, or when you have to fight Trypticon. And finally, I love the subplot with the Dinobots and Shockwave, as it's a great retelling of their origin story, and I love playing as Grimlock here. So overall, I don't personally think that these games are overrated, however I can maybe understand why you might think that. Moving on now to number 6, which also comes from Edgelord. I hate the fact that I've had to say that name twice. But they say that all the G1 designs are mid. And I do mostly agree here. I think the designs work for the animated style, and they work as the first ever designs for these characters, but as time has gone on, I think we have had a lot of much better designs for most of these characters. For some examples of characters that I think have had a much better design in other continuities, there is Einhide and Sideswipe's design from the Bayverse, Bumblebee's design from the Bumblebee movie, and from Transformers Prime, Transformers Prime Megatron, Transformers Armada Starscream, and IDW Hot Rod. I just think the G1 designs are very basic, and they're a bit too blocky for my taste, and so I personally don't think they've aged too well. But there are a couple characters from G1 that I think have great designs. These are Optimus Prime, Galvatron, Ultra Magnus, Blitzwing, Prowl, Soundwave, Shockwave, Devastator, and Wheeljack. Now, I do think these characters have had better designs, but I think their original designs are great too, so basically I don't think every G1 design is mid, but I do think most of them are. Next up is our 7th opinion, which comes from Fulcrum Agent, and they say that they are tired of kiddie Transformers shows taking over. And I partly agree here, but I also disagree as well. So first I should say, Transformers is mainly aimed towards younger audiences, but with that, I don't think the franchise needs to be as kiddie as it has been recently with its TV shows. I think what makes Transformers great is that it is mature, but still has light-hearted moments sprinkled in. For example, Transformers Prime, one of the best Transformers shows in my opinion, is aimed towards children, but it doesn't shy away from the more mature stuff such as Bumblebee's death, the battle against Unicron, and the farewell between the Autobots and the humans. I personally think that shows like this are way more compelling for children and connect with them way more than shows like RID 2015 and Earthspark. But with saying that, I don't think it's a bad thing that there is kiddie shows every now and then, as it allows Transformers to be enjoyed by all audiences, and we still have the films that are aimed at slightly older audiences which are still being released. But moving on to our final opinion from you guys, and that is an opinion from Galvatron Be Thick AF. And again, what is with these names? But they say that redeeming Megatron is a dumb thing and it ruins any show or series. And well, I agree to a certain extent, but not lots. I just think that sometimes it's just good to have a villain that is just evil, because that's who they are. Yes, it's not exactly deep or that compelling, however we have loads of other characters that fill that gap, and so I don't think it's necessarily needed to try redeem or justify Megatron being evil. I think Transformers 1 is so good because you see D16 slowly turn into the Megatron we all know and love, but at the same time his actions are not justified and they're not necessarily the right thing to do. So despite the fact that I don't think it's needed, I also think that it can be done every now and then as long as it doesn't try to justify his actions. But now I will give you 2 more of my own unpopular opinions, but before I do, I just need to reiterate that I know these are unpopular, and so I ask that you please be respectful if you disagree and want to discuss mine or any of these other opinions in the comments, as we all love Transformers and we are all allowed to have different opinions on it. So my first opinion is that Hot Rod is not responsible for Optimus Prime's death in the G1 movie. And so to explain myself, I know that he maybe shouldn't have gotten involved, but when you watch the scene back, you clearly see that whilst Optimus has Megatron at gunpoint, Megatron is slowly crawling towards his gun and almost certainly would have grabbed it and killed Optimus right then and there. Seeing this, Hot Rod jumps in to stop Megatron, which does result in Megatron grabbing him and using him as a shield in order to shoot Optimus anyways, which does lead to his death. But I think whether Hot Rod got involved or not, Optimus still would have been caught off guard and killed by Megatron. If anything, I think Hot Rod saved Optimus by stopping Megatron from grabbing his gun. It was just unfortunate that Megatron managed to overpower Hot Rod, as if Hot Rod had managed to get away, Optimus would have been able to kill Megatron right then and there. So basically, I think Optimus would have been killed either way, and to put the blame all on Hot Rod is a bit over the top, as he did very nearly save Optimus's life. And my next and final opinion for this video is that Transformers the game is the best movie tie-in game. And so I know a lot of people would say that Revenge of the Fallen or even Dark of the Moon is the best tie-in game, mainly because of the gameplay mechanics. And yeah, Revenge of the Fallen has a lot smoother movement and transformations, and Dark of the Moon uses the mechanics from the Cybertron games, which a lot of people love, so I can understand that. But I don't think either of those games are that great at taking the film and putting it in a game format. Transformers the game, however, manages to keep all the major plot points from the film and only adds to the overall story by having Shockwave as a boss and having Barricade show up in Mission City. I also think that the boss fights are way more engaging, with there being a different mechanic for each boss, and I also love that the game mainly focuses on hand-to-hand combat, whereas the other games prefer you to shoot your way through every situation. I think this makes the first game a lot more immersive, and feels way more like you're playing with these characters, rather than acting like any other shooter game. I think this game is pretty much perfect as a Transformers movie game, and I wish the other games were like this, just with a few updates to its gameplay mechanics. But with that, we have reached the end of the video, and I just want to thank you all for watching and supporting these videos. I will be making a part 3, so make sure to leave your unpopular opinions in the comment section in order to have a chance of being included in the next one. And make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for when that video comes out. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will see you in the next one.